how that was happening and proceeding, and I just, as you know, as president of the UUA in my role, I feel especially responsible for the care of our GA community and all of its participants, and especially the care for our YA participants, for our youth participants. So I'm listening. I don't want to speak for anything I don't know, but my understanding is this has been complicated, and I just want to express my apologies for ways that we contributed to that, and want to listen and really hear from you all and take questions and hear what you all need.
I too really, I'm here to listen. I have been saying this week that relationships are what matter most to me, what I think the start of a presidency is about, and relationships with all of you are powerful and important. So I mostly actually want to listen rather than speak and hear both your experience, since I'm assuming that what I'm hearing is incomplete, and hear what your views are.
Of course, I echo all that, and we're happy to answer what questions we can if that's helpful. But you know, the thing I just want to say is I've been on UUA staff for 12 years at this point. Also recently aged out of the young adult bracket, and I used to be director of youth and young adult ministry, so I used to be Shannon. And and what I want to say is, like, as complicated as the dynamics that we are experiencing right here, right now are, I think it's part of cycles of things that tend to happen at the end of GA that like predate all of us, predate everybody in this room. And so that's just a piece of the puzzle that I think is really important. There's something that we haven't figured out about how to be in community with each other at General Assembly that has led us to places like this before. And so, you know, I'm channeling some of the comments you made in your presidential forum, Sofia. So we know, the good news is that we know some things about how to respond to that and how to deal with that, and us being here is a part of that, of like, just ask us. I mean, if you got a question, you're like, I don't think I should ask this question. But this is what we're here for, right? So please do, because that, you know, I don't want to be in that space.
I have a request for the three of you. I'm recording, and as a part of staff, I want to ask that anything said by any young adults or staff in this space, there will be no repercussions for questions, because it's all about communication. Unless those questions are like harmful in a way that's undescribably harmful, then the questions will be honest and open.
It's an open invitation to ask what is on your heart.
I just wanted to make that super clear.
And the thing I always say, I believe in radical transparency, and there's some questions that can't be answered, but if I can't answer a question, I'll at least tell you why I can't answer a question. If that seems fair.
You would like to open up the floor?
I'll start. As you know, kind of one of the biggest, areas of conflict, areas of difference, tension between Unitarian Universalists is the differences in need between folks that were raised in the faith and folks that came into the faith later with their own gifts and needs. And I would just like to hear you talk about your philosophies about that.
Powerful question. I mean, one thing I'm aware of is our tradition is a living tradition that is about a spirit of love and inclusion and welcoming, and not that we always embody that perfectly. And so one of the things I say, like, when people join a community, is that the community changes because of the gifts and the experience and perspective that a new person brings. And that's one of the ways that we are a living, changing faith. It's not about conforming. It's not about adopting the culture of a community, but bringing your full self, your whole self to it. And I say that because I think sometimes, and I've experienced this in congregations where people say, well, I've been at UU this many years, and like, it's not, that doesn't make you more a UU. So I think that that's really important to hold. And I think, you know, what I also hear in your question is, what are the different needs and how do you tend to those needs? And I think it is a challenge that we have not as good practices and regular practices around formation and faith formation and leadership formation. This is something Carey and I mean, the pandemic slowed down a lot of things at the UUA as we were responding, just, you know, in the ways that we had to that crisis. But we have made some investments this year to grow more leadership structure around leadership formation, because like, that's important, right? And there is ways in which you grow when you grow. The youth asked me what I, you know, as a lifelong UU, what was valuable, and I talked about leadership development being something that was a part of growing up at UU, because I got to lead worship and I got to lead cons and conferences and events, and so and that isn't always true. So I think we do need to invest more in faith formation and leadership development. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not a lifelong UU. I became a UU around 20, so as an early emerging adult, and particularly in relationship to campus ministry and college life. And so I have this very particular view of the importance of campus ministry, the importance of faith formation in some particular years of development, and my experience of youth faith formation is being a volunteer, which is what I, you know, children's choir and RE classrooms and other things that I used to do in my home church in Ithaca. But for me, there is this constant arc of a need for deepening who we understand ourselves to be, no matter when we became Unitarian Universalists. The thing that I've experienced so often in the parish is how sometimes, you know, members who are like proud to have been UUs for 50 years are still having the same kind of depth of conversation as folks who came in 5 years ago, because we forget. I think we do really good work welcoming and resourcing and supporting folks who are finding us. And there are windows of time that I think we do incredible work with faith formation across earlier ages. But when you've been a UU for more than 5 years as an adult, I think that there can be, unless you are intentional about living into some of the kind of broader, more often national-based programs that we provide, there is this dip, like you should be constantly learning, you know, in this moment, like what the purposes and principles are again, you know, for the 10th time. So I'm always really curious about how we build layers of meaning making and experience and exposure. And to me, that's just as important if you came in at 2 as if you came in at 20 or came in at 60. Like, how are we resourcing you for meaning making across life? And I want to say out loud, I recognize that what I just said to you is very much the perspective of someone who found this faith rather than being raised.
As most people did.
Right, as most people did. I try to be very mindful of not assuming that everyone in the room had a faith journey where they had to wrestle, discern, and find Unitarian Universalism. So that's always a mindfulness piece for me. It's a great question. Thank you.
If I can also just add that dealing with this spiritual trauma from coming from other faith traditions does take up a lot of space. I'm also raised UU. I went to General Assembly as a youth delegate, and I'm actually a many generations UU. I'm a 7th generation UU.
Okay. We don't want to kick you off.
No one's trying. So to me, this piece about faith formation and leadership development are about helping people see a pathway to move through that and not just like get stuck in those same pieces, right? And I also just want to recognize the work that Yarn has started doing and has been doing in a really lovely, holistic way. I'm glad our staff and the UA has been able to be supportive in that. But I think it's it requires the look, the answer to that question is both about resourcing young adults, I think especially in the younger emerging adult, real searching time directly, as well as helping our congregations and our communities adapt and change and welcome come along. Like, it takes both of those things in order to bridge that gap.
I have a question if nobody else wants to go. So the divestment resolution did not pass, but I at least really appreciated the board coming to talk to us beforehand. One thing that the board mentioned was that, like, giving us a timeline of on which we could hold them accountable wasn't really feasible because of the roadblocks that they were facing from a financial situation. And I'm wondering what kinds of tools of accountability there might be, or like what will the UUA be doing to kind of make sure that that accountability is there in spite of the resolution not passing? Because my understanding is, like, there's general support for the idea, just that the practicalities are very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I want to say, and I won't have any role in this in 10 days, but I really think the congregational study action issue process is a valuable one that could help us hold a container for this congregation that happens not just at the UUA, not just between our climate justice activists and groups in the UUA, but in our congregations as well. So the congregational study action issue, when a congregational study action issue gets adopted, the UUA invests resources around curriculum, conversation tools, things to help congregations engage serious questions that need study and need to move the needle. We did this around immigration. We had immigration as a moral issue, was a study action issue, and so congregations did that work for years. They did, my congregation did the curriculum 3 different times. We had so many people wanted to do it, and out of that, the UUA has really shifted its understanding about the ways in which our immigration system is fundamentally exploitative. It's not broken, it is fundamentally exploitative. And there's and so now we talk, to defund ICE. There's all kinds of ways where we have taken really dramatic stands because we did that work in our congregation, so it was deep. So I think that is a real opportunity,
Okay.
and then it helps us invest in the conversation together, and the outcome of a study action issue is a statement of conscience, which could clearly help us define how do we live our values in this exploitative capitalist system in which, yes, we are all complicit in all kinds of ways. And so, and how do we do reparations work? Now, whether or not, anyway, I think to do this work and to go far, going together and deepening the understanding across our congregations is really important. And the CSAI would hold the UUA accountable for funding that process, those conversations. It's a defined process in the bylaws. And it would bring the General Assembly, our delegates, our congregations along for the conversation. So I think that is a huge opportunity and a way of having accountability and commitment. And I'm speaking for me personally, Susan.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think that divestment is never a thing that will be completed. It is an ongoing conversation, an ongoing discernment about how far we can push with the options that are in front of us. And over the last decade that we've been working on climate divestment, we have, with our allies, and it's really important for us to work with other groups because we only have so much money in the giant pool of global money. We've pushed there to be options for investing that didn't used to be there, right? So building strength in numbers is a big part of our strategy, and that takes time also, right? So the CSAA process is definitely a powerful one and leads to a specific conclusion. I also think it's just become very clear on our side our investment committees, volunteers, like we have not created the infrastructure to support the ongoing dialogue with our activists, with our folks doing climate justice, but we have many folks doing climate justice. We haven't built those bridges in the way we need to, but our side would love we have a full-time climate justice organizer. We have a huge,
First time.
yeah,
Last year and a half ago.
last year we hired that person. So we have to build those bridges, and we have to do that. I think in the course of the next year, we will have to create spaces to talk about that. Just like on this, like transparently on this Sunday of GA, like I don't exactly know what all of those things are, but I know that we will talk about that because we will be committed to coming to GA next year with a different set of conversations under our belt, and a different ability to move forward.
I want to add, what did you
I just have a question coming from the standpoint of someone who's also a young adult, despite like being on staff. This week I've noticed just a lot of like confusion just about divestment because of the different things being said or not communicated, and I noticed that one ongoing thing that a lot of people have mentioned is the lack of communication that was provided this whole process, and people as a general community feel like, I mean, I of course cannot speak for everyone, but I speak for what I've seen, and people including me have been confused as to what is going on. Delegates are supposed to be sure of what's going on, and the numbers, so many, or I say so many in a relative amount of YA people, but so many people have mentioned not knowing, and the point of General Assembly and General Session is for that knowledge to be like passed on, which it was. So I just wanted to ask if you could like talk directly a little bit about the UU Common Endowment and what divestment is. Like, you as the higher ups of the UUA who are all at General Session that everyone hears, can you just speak a little bit about divestment, like, and what has been going on, if that is not against?
I think that's great, and I think that's maybe Carey, but can I say something really quickly before that?
Absolutely.
I feel like this is another example of a moment where we realize coming out of tension that we have not communicated enough. We haven't communicated enough. And so, we experienced this in 2017, coming out of the higher in the southern region. There was misinformation, a lot of anxiety, and that anxiety comes specifically when we feel like we don't recognize ourselves in our own faith values anymore. I just want to say, like, from a pastoral care place, and I feel something similar right now. And I think we learned some from that moment about the kinds of transparency and just the repeated, multifaceted communication that helped us come to GA with a shared collective understanding that was more comprehensive. And so I'm with Carey. I can't say on a Sunday what that will look like over the course of this year. I can tell you that I have always been in my ministry committed to radical transparency within the bounds of what is legal to share, right? And so we will find methods to do that so that when we arrive at General Assembly next year, we can have a different conversation. And I hope that it helps to say, I think that is a way to track accountability, right? To have regular updates, even if it's not a timeline, but to even say, it's been 3 months, this is the same update as last time, but it's been 3 months. We are still in the process of X, is a kind of way to stay in conversation so that it is not a siloed set of information that just gets announced once a year.
Okay, I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes to describe the UU Common Endowment.
Elevator speed.
UU Common Endowment is technically its own entity controlled by the UUA, and its goal is to hold the endowment money that the UUA has, as well as congregations, to manage that money in accordance with our values and to help people basically pay their bills. So an endowment holds money, it invests it in companies, in bonds, in community development financial institutions, and then you get a little bit of money back. You get a defined rate back. And we've actually lowered that rate recently so that we're not putting too much pressure on our endowment so that we can make other decisions in accordance with our values. So the endowment is currently a little over $200 million, which is a lot of money. But just so you know, one of the big dogs in like ethical investing is the California Pension Fund for public employees there, and that's like $5 billion, right? So like there's a lot of money involved. There are rules about our endowments, of course, but we have our own rules. And so our rules dictate how we engage in ethical investing, and we do that in a couple of primary ways. The common endowment is made up of things that we, like companies we buy the stock, we're saying we're gonna do that. And then the majority is groups that we hire to manage it on our behalf. Because if we did it all, we'd be like an investment firm with a bunch of people, and that's not us, right? We have volunteers and like a staff person. So we do for our values in 3 primary ways. The first is what's called screening. So that says things that we won't buy, companies we won't buy. So right now that includes weapons manufacturers, tobacco companies.
Wait, can you,
Sure.
sorry, I'm trying to record stuff for people online. Can you
Okay.
go a little more slowly?
Sorry, okay,
Weapons?
Yeah, so this is in policy. Weapons manufacturers, tobacco companies, private prisons, and now fossil fuel companies. And a lot of things are involved in the fossil fuel industry. So the way we define that is companies that own fossil fuels. So those would be oil companies, gas companies, they own reserves. This is a list called the Carbon Underground 200. That's how we define what is a fossil fuel company, okay? So that's one. We also are trying to, more than just saying these are things we exclude, we're trying to get data, which is like literally just coming on to be available in the last year or so, and this is rooted in a resolution that passed in 2020, about what companies are doing for all of their human rights. How are they treating their employees? What's their LGBTQ policy? What are they doing about, deforestation? What are they doing about, war-torn countries, right? So like, to know that information and then deprioritize and sell those companies too. But we need more information to be able to do that effectively, right? So that's one part, is the screening, the stuff that we hold. We are divested from fossil fuel companies at this point, 100%. Second part is about how we choose the people who manage the remainder of our money. Okay,
I
give me
made
30
you
more
talk
seconds.
slowly.
Is how we choose, I'll take one more minute, is how we choose the people who manage the remainder of our money. These are sometimes called pooled funds or outside managers, right? So we try to select those folks. We try to select Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are managing those funds. They have goals for the funds, but we don't control all the decisions they make. So that's the area where I think we have a lot more work to do in the next year to know exactly what's happening in all of those funds, to evaluate how well those managers are living up to their commitments. And to find better ones, and maybe try to help create better ones so that we have people who can manage our money in accordance with our values, because that actually isn't that popular in the investing space, turns out.
Well,
the third way is that we have what are called direct community investments, which is a carve out of the endowment, and it goes directly to like organizations doing racial justice work, building affordable housing. We just made a $2 million investment in an indigenous-run institution that's investing in like in reservations and companies run by indigenous people. So it's those 3 combination of things that make it all up, and it's always changing. There's always in flux. It's always balancing. So one of the hard things is you can't just say, we'll only do this and not that, because our managers are always turning stuff over, and we need to tell them, we need to give them enough instructions that they can follow it and then hold them accountable. So that's where we are in this process. How's that?
And can I add 2 things?
Please.
So one, it is the UUA's endowment and the congregations that belong to the UU Common Endowment Fund. So it's not all UU congregations. The UU Common Endowment Fund probably represents, I don't know, maybe a third or a quarter of all the endowment money in Unitarian Universalism.
I think it's like 40 or 45% is the UUA. Within the common endowment fund. Oh, well, yes, and then there's lots of congregations
So,
not invested in the common.
That was my
I see
point,
what
I'm
you're saying.
sorry.
I see what you're saying.
What's in the endowment? About 40, or about half of it is the UUAs, the rest is from congregations. But even that whole pool is probably only a third or a quarter of all the money in congregational endowments.
Yeah.
So we have 1,000 congregations, only about 300 are a part of the UU Common Endowment. So like that's important to know, because there's opportunity here to be more powerful with more congregations joining in the work. The other thing I would just want to add is the human rights business resolution that passed in 2020 and the ways we're trying to get screening, like we're pushing the industry. to look at these things and to be able to be public about data on these companies. So not, this is another place where we are trying to move what is publicly available to people about the labor practices and the governance practices and within companies.
But I will make a commitment today, which is that I will work with our CFO and our investment committee to get a less than 5-minute video that explains the common endowment posted by, I don't know, the end of the calendar year. Probably earlier, but Susan's coaching me to not
Do you
make
think that we could say a little earlier, like the end of the quarter, like the coming quarter? Does that like?
That is my goal, and
Okay.
I don't want to make you a promise I can't keep.
Okay. Optimistically, 3 months from.
With that, I would like to respect everyone's time. It is 2:15. I know that you have a hard out.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your words, your wisdom.